Vanakkam. Welcome to this course on classics in neuroscience. In this series of videos, we have been looking at the background of neurology and how it led to the development of brain imaging. So, we were discussing the neurological unit of the Boston City Hospital. So, we were discussing the work done at the Boston City Hospital, especially the work of Stanley Cobb. In this video, we will look at the contributions of Denny-Brown and some of his collaborators Raymond and C. Miller Fisher, and how their work helped improve our understanding of some other diseases of the neural system other than epilepsy that we saw in the previous video. So, Denny-Brown was born and educated in New Zealand, and he trained with Sherrington in the 1920s. So, he was part of the team that went on to study the classic reflex activity in the spinal cord that was published in 1932. So, he was part of the team with Liddell Eccles and others that led to the publication of the reflex activity of the spinal cord. And with Sherrington, he performed some work that suggested that larger motor units were recruited with increasing levels of excitation of afferent fibers, something that he found as early as 1930s. This idea essentially laid the foundation or laid the groundwork for what was later described more rigorously by Henneman and his colleagues, that went on to be called as the Henneman's principle or the size principle, in which according to the size principle, motor units are recruited in order of increasing size and de-recruited in the order of decreasing size, something to keep in mind. The details of this I will provide a video from another course that I have taught. This is Neuroscience of Human Movements course. Video from that course will be shared with you in the forum and also in the description of this video. So, that size principle was rigorously described in the 1950s by Henneman and colleagues, but the foundation for that was laid by Denny-Brown in the 1930s. And he also started and he practically discovered or invented the electromyograph to study electrical activity of muscles. This helped in a great way to study muscle disorders or neuromuscular disorders or muscle problems. And he also introduced muscle biopsy as one of the ways in which we can study the health of the muscle. So, he was interested in investigating the neural mechanisms that control muscles in general. In particular, he focused on micturition and defecation, urination and defecation. This might seem well such a big study, but it has extraordinarily crucial consequences for patients with spinal cord injury or patients with spinal paralysis. So, in 1936, he joined the Rockefeller Foundation as a fellow with Fulton at Yale University, and he studied the effects of cortical ablations, precentral cortical ablations on motor function in monkeys. So, if you remove tissue in the precentral region in the cortex, what happens to the monkeys is what he studied. And if you observed those videos, so he essentially took movies, recorded videos using perhaps movie cameras, and he played it for the students to see. The monkeys were in a pathetic condition. In today's world, the sensitivity of the students and animal rights requirements would prevent screening of such videos, but in the good old days this was possible. So, he essentially recorded from these monkeys and screened them for the students to see. It is crucial for students to learn from such media and such cases, because you can't always have exposure to patients, that is one. Two is you can learn a lot from animal studies. So, this was one of his important crucial contributions among the many contributions that he has made. He also developed some therapies for abnormal postures and movements in patients. So, Raymond Adams was another scientist who joined Denny-Brown's neurological unit in 1941. He was studying concussion in cats and motor paralysis in rats, among other things. So, he studied what happened due to necrotizing or acute necrotizing hemorrhagic encephalopathy along with Denny-Brown and Jan Kammermeyer. He collaborated continuously with Denny-Brown on several topics, and this work produced the classic monograph. It is called as the Diseases of the Muscle in 1950s. And he investigated EEG activity during hepatic coma along with Joseph Foley. They also studied topics such as congenital hydrocephalus and pituitary adenomas. So, in 1950s he took over as the neurological service chief at the Massachusetts General Hospital. So it is considered that Ray Adams was a teacher par excellence. He was an extraordinarily good teacher and an educator. His focus was on educating scores of neurologists, generations of neurologists who came much later. And the way in which he would explain things was different, unique, that led to the students remembering him and his lessons for a long time. One example that is given by the textbook's author is that a person who is psychopathic, today would be called a sociopathic, is a person who has a moral blind spot. Something that you will remember, that this is just like anybody else except that this person has a moral blind spot. That is it, that is the only difference. Trivial as the difference might be, it makes a huge impact in the way in which she or he interacts with the rest of the universe, right. So, but still that lesson stays with us, that definition, it stays with us. One of Ray Adams' colleagues at MGH was Miller Fisher, who was interested in studying transient ischemic attacks as precursors to strokes. So, these transient ischemic attacks are episodes that last from a few seconds to sometimes even several hours, sometimes even as long as 24 hours. The most commonly, the duration of these TIAs are from 5 minutes to 10 minutes. Essentially, if you can identify that a TIA has happened, a person can get anticoagulant treatment, and this treatment can be very effective within the first few hours after the onset of this. But if this continues for more than 24 hours, it is called as a stroke. So, this definition of transient ischemic attack was first proposed by this team, but the current time based definition is that there must be a sudden focal neurological deficit and it should last less than 24 hours, and it must of course have a presumed vascular origin, brain or eye, perfused by a specific artery. There are also tissue based definitions that is available. It must be a brief episode lasting less than 1 hour, and it must involve focal brain or retinal ischemia and without evidence of any acute infarction. So, these developments led neurology to an entirely new ground, from studying epilepsy to studying stroke and the paralysis that occurred after stroke and what happened before stroke. Sometimes what happens before stroke is this TIAs, transient ischemic attacks, and if you can properly diagnose and quantify this, maybe it is possible to help the patient in a better way. So, these groundbreaking moves were made at the Massachusetts General Hospital by this team. With this, we come to the end of this video. In this video, we continued our discussion of the work that happened at the Boston City Hospital, later at the Massachusetts General Hospital. Specifically, we focused on the work of Denny-Brown and Raymond Adams and Miller Fisher. With this, we come to the end of this video. Thank you for your attention.